Thank you.
Okay, lovely, Katie. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Right, thank you everybody. Apologies for the delay in starting today. Just a couple of welcome to today's meeting. Just a couple of health and safety things for the three of us that are here in the building. The meeting is being held in the supper room at the Waihinga Centre and the Town Hall and by audio visual conference. All members participating via video conference will count for the purposes of the meeting forum in accordance with Clause 25B of Schedule 7 to the Local Government Act. The meeting is being live streamed to Council's YouTube channel. We'll call for apologies. This morning I have apologies from Mayor Alex and Councillor Fox. Are there any other apologies? No.
I move that those apologies be accepted.
Thank you. Colin has moved that the apologies be accepted. I'll get a seconder for that, please. Thank you, Brenda. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Carried. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest to declare? Brenda?
Pam, I've just got a question. Do we actually have a quorum?
3, 4. I would think so because there's 4 of us here and on 2 on live stream and 2 here. That would be of the 6 that are coming.
Lovely. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone have any conflicts of interest? No, thank you very much. We don't have any public participation, so we're up to A4 actions from public participation, so there won't be any for that. A5 is extraordinary business. Did anyone have any extraordinary business to have on the table? No, thank you. So we're up to A6, which is the minutes for confirmation. We're considering the minutes from the Planning and Regulatory Committee meeting held on the 1st of June. Are there any corrections needed?
Sorry, no, Pam, not from my end.
Thank you, Lee. Rebecca's nodding. I mean, Brenda's shaking her head, so it's good. So, do I have a mover that the minutes of the Planning and Regulatory Committee meeting held on the 1st of June are
I'll do that, Pam.
Thank you, Lee. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Brenda. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Okay. So today we're up to C1, which is the report for Planning and Regulatory Group report.
I'll receive the report, Pam, if you want.
Thank you, Councillor Hay, and I'll second that. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. All carried. So would you like to talk to your report?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Coverage update of what we're doing, including teams. Business roles on across each of the teams: planning, building and environmental services. Noting that planning has its regulatory and growth planning work amongst its mix. Building services, just the additional note that we got our accreditation confirmation sent through last week, so that's pleasing. And good to recognise the good work that's been led out by Sarah in that round to get our audit again for our ECA. And in terms of environmental services, you know, the steady mix of public safety and wild and related work. You note that bottom line, alcohol team has recently inquired into alcohol applications, which has seen opposition raised by some agencies, and these matters are likely to be answered through a hearing process. So that's just a general signal there. And amongst staff matters, yeah, there's a bit of one member away COVID, and we're mindful of playing a safe game in that space. Any questions from councillors on that? And if not,
Oh, I didn't quite hear that last bit, Russell. I'm sorry.
just in terms of, I just mentioned that Rick helped with a summary comment about alcohol applications and some opposition by agencies, and these will be dealt with through normal hearing process, and that we have one member away from the team, and we're, as a group, we're getting smarter and responding to the COVID risk that's about.
Great. Thanks, Russell.
Thank you. Legislative RMA change, which councillors have had briefings on. I just thought I should leave that in there with the diagram at this stage, unless you're thinking it should be removed at some point, but it's a helpful visual. And the latter portion, I've put some bullet points in there as to detail the objective of the reforms in RMA, protect and restore the environment at its capacity, better enable development within natural environmental limits, etc., and better prepare for adaptation to climate change. And I made the just point at the bottom, underlying themes within the reform include new regional level planning documents, more cohesive planning, that's an inherent aim in providing stronger future spatial planning is done, and the use of natural environmental limits for greater clarity in responding to RM matters. In terms of the South Wairarapa spatial plan, the engagement has rolled on with that, and tomorrow councillors will have their heads busy with the presentation of our draft discussion document that we would like to talk about and present our options and have good discussion prior to it being taken out for informal consultation. So there's been a lot, and we're still continuing to have our meetings with agencies and local engagement, mainly through Kendall's efforts there. There is the prospect in terms of working towards a draft, doing our draft discussion document, then doing the draft, and then working towards a final, that the time frame will go beyond the end of this year, and so it'll move most likely from December through till March, roughly around March, in terms of finalising stuff, because we're going to make sure we produce a good master plan result fit for Featherston across that 30-year horizon. So I didn't want to say much more than that on that topic, as we'll be getting into it tomorrow with councillors. District plan review, James and I have been going to the meetings with that ongoing contribution from all the councillors in the mixed committee, and several topics of late have been covered off, including anything from notable trees subdivision rules, policy, future urban areas, open space, heritage, biodiversity, residential matters. There will be several further meetings by the review committee, working in a workshop mode to look at chapters and refine matters before Bottomist will shape up the draft prior to the elections, and then the draft Wairarapa Combined District Plan, the document will go out after the elections. So it's been steady work there, and noting that it's been chaired by David McMahon, an independent RM consultant with advice from officers and the mixed membership of 2 councillors from each of the 3 councils inputting and checking matters as topics are presented to them. So overall, it's tracking along pretty well. Which brings us up to the proposed council dog count. So Rick has been a busy beaver in that space. He gave you an update on that last time. We've been in the middle of a tender process, and should you wish to hear some more information on that, we've got Rick there who can perhaps give a mini summary and respond to any questions.
Rick does the summary first, and then we can do any questions after that.
If you're on his Rick, yes.
Hi, Rick. I've through you, Pam. Am I allowed to ask a question now, or do you want to wait for Rick to give us a summary?
Rick, do you want to take questions now or do your summary first?
Questions are fine.
Questions, fine. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay. Hi, Rick. Thank you. Good to see that we're progressing well with this, and the budgets are still looking reasonably good. Just a question, where did you land with the solar panels? I know there was a conversation that we should have maximum capacity looking forward to the future, rather than just the minimum required. Which option did you decide to go with?
So we ended up, through an internal staff member, actually put us in contact with a local designer and supplier, and we had a conversation with him, and he's formulating a design for us in regards to what's the best option, and allowing us to have future capacity in terms of what we've looked at. So we've sort of, and everything we've done in regarding to the design, we've always looked at, should we need to double our capacity? That's where we've looked at. We'd rather have that built in now and not need it, rather than scramble to try and find everything. So in a roundabout way, yes, we've sought advice on that, and we're waiting for him to come back with his design and specifications regarding the solar system.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. You've thought of everything, Rick. Oh, sorry. Just had one more canine question for you. How are we going with dog registrations because of the challenges at the library? Do you think that's going to make an impact? Are you comfortable that things will get back to normal shortly?
It seems to be running smoothly at the moment, but it's like the last couple of years. We've adapted to what it is, and we have some backup options. So we're hoping that people are getting in nice and early. We've pushed email registrations so when we send it out via email, and they can pay online. So we're hoping people are taking that up, and we've seen quite a good uptake on that. So yeah, as we get closer towards the end where the penalty period comes in, we'll engage proactively with people to see where they're at.
And maybe consider an extension if because of the library closures, etc.
Yes, without saying yes.
You're
so
looking at all backup options.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I-
Thank you, Rick.
I always suggest that people get in and talk to us early. But yeah, we will have options up our sleeve.
Excellent. It's all I wanted to know. Thank you, Rick.
Lovely. Colin? Yes.
Thanks, Ricky. I've got a number of questions, so I'll just face them bit by bit. Firstly, I've picked up on Lee's, Councillor Hayes' comments about budgets look reasonably good. I'm not sure, we haven't actually seen other than what we've allocated in there and the plan for there's no budgetary information. We haven't got the final costings at this stage, have we?
Great.
Right. So I just picked up on what you said about the design concept. You've chosen a preferred supplier, but you're also talking about designing it as well. Can you just perhaps elaborate a little bit on that, or did I mishear?
In regards to
The pound itself and its design.
so when I talk about the pound, you've got a multitude of different mechanisms within that. So what we've had to do, because we're not in Johnson Street, is we've actually had to create a whole new compound. So that includes the entire fencing, lighting, septic, water, power. What we went out to procurement was the design and concept of the kennels in regards to the container. And so we've went through a formal procurement process. We have publicised to the world. We got 3 applicants and expressed interest. Of those applicants, 2 moved into the next stage, which went to the RFP. And then we followed a evaluation criteria process and formally had discussions with that. We've got a preferred supplier, and now we're in the engagement to get down to a contractual arrangement.
Okay, so the design, sorry, you referred to the compound, and I understand that completely, but the structure itself, the container structure itself, that's previously designed, and you've gone out for tenders on the construction of just that?
No, so we went out, so the procurement was for design and construction of the container.
Okay. So yeah, I'll come back to it with the next question. I said somebody else wanted to ask questions. Sorry.
Finish the minute or you want to-
Yeah, no, let Brenda ask, and I'll just come back and ask a couple of other questions.
Hey, Rick. Mine's just a really quick question with regards to the dog registrations. Even if a person was to pay late, it doesn't work on a pro rata where, you know, they're paying late, so they're paying from, say, October through to the end of the term. It's always, is it backdated from the beginning of the registration period? What I'm getting at is that are people delaying so they can pay less?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So if it's a renewal registration, it's for the full year. So if like your Warren Fitness is now, they go back to the date that it was expired. Yeah.
It's excellent. Thank you.
So, yeah. So, Rick, just a couple of other things. So, any joint dog pound now is completely off the table. Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I did.
No, and probably it's not a question that you can answer. It's probably more directed at Harry, because it's still.
No, so the direction we've got from this committee and from council is that we were to seek a option where South Wairarapa District Council went on its own. That was after a multitude of years and meetings and discussions with other councils as to what it was. And despite what was in the local rag, it was not us that decided to go that way. In fact, it was Carterton who moved to go on their own first, which we then decided to go to our design. We've now invested heavily in terms of time, both through officers and committee and councils, to go to that option. I've always had the understanding that if other parties wanted to talk to us, absolutely open to those. But I've received no communications from anyone in regards to beyond what we're doing in terms of our pound.
Appreciate that, and obviously both you and I are looking for the best outcome for our ratepayers at the end of the day. And there have been some comments made about the number of pounds, the distance travelled for a joint pound, and we've done a lot of research around that area there. So I had to ask the question: is it off the table at this stage? Of saying you could still have a negotiation, you could still have a conversation with Carter.
I think at the end of the day, this council's got to decide: do we keep going back and forward where you want your pound to go, or have you decided, which is the clear indication I've had in the last 12 months, is that we've decided to go and invest time and effort to look at our solution. We've done that. We are down the track to where we're now engaging with suppliers. I don't see it being a situation where we would be looking, unless someone came up with some fantastic option. I think what we're doing is both innovative and cost effective for the ratepayers in South Wairarapa District Council. Remembering we have a large geographical area, including a rural area, and if we were adding that time to go up to Carterton or Masterton, that has to be costs that are factored in to the ratepayers and dog owners of this region. I still strongly believe that the option that we're putting forward is the most cost effective for a small council to establish a statutory obligation of providing an animal facility within its region.
Yeah.
I think just following on from that, I think you're right, Rick, that the idea of a shared dog pound fell over, and so we had to take that. We had to meet our statutory obligations, and therefore we had to look at it on our own. But I'm sure that if Carterton or Masterton wish to inquire about joining us or doing something like that, then everybody will be open to that discussion. But the instigation of that needs to come from them, not from us.
So just as a carry on, because we've got a budgeted amount there, and I know that we're probably not going to divulge what your costings are looking at the moment. But in my understanding, and I do apologise, I thought it was 240, but I understand that there was another 100,000 from the LTP prior to me coming on council, so you've got 340 to play with. So you're still confident that you can work within those figures?
Yeah, I think you've got to realise the context of the environment you're currently in. You're running an inflation of what, 6 or 7%. You're also running 16 to 20% increase in costs on construction materials on a month-by-month basis, and in some aspects on a day-to-day basis. So to be confident to say that you could meet that today may not be you'd meet that in a month's time or 2 months' time. And I strongly believe that those that are running projects up and down the country are finding exactly the same thing, that this is a moving bus on a constant basis. Plus, you've also got to recognise that when we're talking about Johnson Street, that the amenities of power, septic and water were mains and connected. Now we're going in an innovative and a more climate responsible step or philosophy, in that we're looking at solar, we're looking at tank water, and we're looking at how our septic is being used as well. So that's a standalone system. They're not cheap, and they're not costs that, with all due respect, previous councils had envisioned when they originally set that budget.
I think too, when the budget was set, Rick, there was also once you had an idea of what some of those costings were going to be, if it was going to be outside that figure, then it came back to PNR and to council. So there was that thing.
That provision, yeah, I'm aware of.
Absolutely, and
There is
all has got that
Yeah.
top of mind,
Yeah, I've
front
just-
of face, and
Yeah,
everything like that, so
Yeah,
he's
I'm-
considering all that as he goes along.
I'm not a lover of no surprises, so I'm just.
Yeah.
Running
Look,
down.
please be assured that we are borrowing heavily in terms of our favours from suppliers, getting them to buy into what we're wanting to do, and we're getting absolutely brilliant support from our local suppliers and those that are invested in this idea. For prime example, the preferred supplier in regards to the container is absolutely eating up costs left, right, and centre. That if we were to pay for, you'd be spending half your budget just on engineering costs. But they can see the concept, they see the value in it, they think it's an absolutely great idea, and are absolutely excited to work with us. And that's been the general consensus with the suppliers we've talked to, that they're really liking the idea and are willing to sharpen the pencil as much as they can to help us out. So if we come to if the vision I have in my head we get done, I think everybody around the table and the decision makers can be absolutely proud of what they've going to put forward.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to that. But I just have a couple more very quick questions that you may or may not be able to answer. Is that back in 2017 when we moved the replacement of our dog pound, we in our fees and charges for dog registration and for dog compliance, that we factored that replacement amount into our fees and charges, and have done so ever since 2017. So from my, I guess my limited knowledge of funding and finance, I would imagine that we would have put some money aside for this replacement pound with those additional fees and charges being charged for that replacement. Are you able to answer that for me or not?
Oh,
Does it work that way or doesn't it?
yeah, I'd have to talk to finance on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. So, yeah, I'd quite like an answer to that. And the other thing is I've been told that South Road District Council put a 1.5 fee on any payment transaction that's done internet payment. Are you aware of that?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that part.
So a fee for paying online, South Road District Council put a fee on there of 1.5% for their dog registrations. Do you know about that, Dustin?
So,
That's
so
private finance. It's a financial question, that one.
that would be a transactional fee, not a direct fee.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks, Rick.
Colin, I'll navigate on pass that comment through to Mr. Wilson and
That's fine,
will
yeah.
answer that question.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brenda, you've been waiting.
Patiently.
Thanks, Pam. Councillor Colenso. Question for Rick. This has been on the table for many years, and we've heard Councillor Old say 2017, so that's what, 5 years. So in theory, if we were to join with another council and create a joint pound, how much would it be in cost and time? What is that? Yeah. What would it cost for us to actually then kind of like turn tail and join with another council? And is it worth it at this late stage in the process?
So I've the original idea of whether the Wairarapa needs 3 individual pounds or whether it needs 1 or 2 is probably the same argument you'd say whether we need 3 councils. The current state of play is, even if you took the dramatic view of Masterton having the only one, South Wairarapa would still have to have some sort of holding pen or kennels to hold dogs outside of the hours that you could get there. It's simply not feasible for an officer to go to Ngāwee, pick up a dog, drive all the way to Masterton, just on a fatigue factor and health and safety. And that's again would be whether we had a 24/7 access to the pound, which is my understanding we wouldn't. Therefore, we would have to put the dog somewhere which would be closer to us.
Yeah.
So if we then extrapolate that out, you would then say, in your wisdom, if I have a main centre in Masterton, I would want a satellite system in my most southern part from that within the region. So again, it would make sense that South Wairarapa District Council is most likely the most southern point from Masterton, and therefore we would need to build a satellite holding kennel scenario as it is. Part of what we're designing, I believe, would meet both those functions. One, it's a standalone pound for us in terms of the numbers we had. We have room to move that, say, Carterton decided to come and talk to us and want to be involved. But also, if the ratepayers within the district decided that it was an amalgamation and Masterton built their large pound, it would make sense for us to have a satellite. It would cover the region so that people in Ngawi or on the coast or in Featherston, they don't have to drive all the way to Masterton to go pick up their dog, or the costs involved for the council to drive officers to be able to that distance as well.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
Councillor Hay.
Hi there. Good question, Brenda. Look, Pam and I have sat through, for the last 2.5 years, we've sat through the shared services meetings, and this subject has been discussed at length. And the thing was, as Rick rightly said, that the model that Masterton wanted was quite different to ours. The level of service was different. At the time when it was decided that we couldn't see a way of working through the costs and the sort of things that Masterton wanted, they hadn't even completed final budgets. And we asked and asked, because you can't make a decision on that without actually knowing the budgets. With respect to Carterton, initially we felt there could be a meeting of the ways with Carterton, but equally, as we've just seen in the papers over recent times, their budget's just skyrocketed. And I think I'd just like to commend Rick. I know you've got some challenges around this, Colin, but I think we worked extremely diligently on this and with the real willing to try and see if we could make it work. But budget-wise, it just wasn't working. And also, we always needed to consider that satellite aspect for the southernmost part of the Wairarapa district. So, and notwithstanding the fact that all 3 pounds are currently illegal, they're not up to standard. So, in my view, if we suddenly, this is sort of partly in answer to your question, Brenda, having sat through shared services, in my view, if at this late stage we suddenly decided to join hands with Carterton, I can't see it happening for another 2 years. They haven't even got their final cost. They haven't. So the direction we gave Rick, sorry to be a bit long-winded about this, but I actually feel passionately that Rick has steered us a good direction. He's innovative in what he's presented to us, and his relationship with the suppliers has been such that we've cut a lot of costs out. So I fully and totally support you, Rick, and I certainly, for one, would recommend that we just continue along our path. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hay, and I would endorse that. I think we asked for something that was innovative, and Rick has gone outside the square, so to speak, to think along those lines. And I think we just need to sit tight and just take it as Rick, at the pace that Rick's doing it, and get ourselves the best little dog pound that we can possibly have. So we've got our faith in you, Rick, so to speak. I think it's gorgeous, so great.
Yeah. Look, thank you for the support, and definitely I do enjoy the question and accountability of it as well, because that's made us really think outside the square and to come up with innovative solutions. And I'd like to take all the credit myself, but it's never one person that pulls us along. And Andrew McEwen has been an absolute solid gold for me in regards to his thinking, as well as helping out, as is Russell, Harry, and councillors as well. So it's a team effort on this one.
Right, thank you. Right, Russell, do you want to keep going?
Yeah, I just thought we just had the situation of we've got Melanie waiting, but I wanted to draw council's attention to the topic that was raised at the last meeting through Councillor Olds. Further information in terms of the state of earthquake-prone buildings within the district. From that last meeting, there was an email sent out giving a mini summary. What you see in today's report is a further elaboration of that, of the sort of case history of the legislation that happened from 2017. And Sarah has helpfully compiled that, including in the fact that today we have issued 23 earthquake-prone notices during 2018 through to 2020, and she's put some related information as to the nature of those buildings. Overall, we don't have many as a district, but we've hopefully this provides a suitable update for you. And final note there is the buildings that have been issued earthquake-prone notices have 15 years from the date of notice to have strengthening work completed.
Through you, Madam Chair. Russell, just in terms of something that I really saw recent is that there has been a softening of the determination of what is deemed to be an earthquake-prone building. Is that a change in legislation?
I can't answer that accurately. Sorry, we did have Sarah there.
Yeah.
So
seriously, yeah.
She might have heard more.
Do you know anything about that, Sarah?
Can you repeat that, Colin? I didn't quite catch what you said.
Just a softening, and my understanding is there is a softening in legislation on the determination of an earthquake-prone building, or some changes of recent.
MB have kind of come out with some statements around basically the level of risk of the earthquake-prone buildings. You know, you're more likely to get killed in a car crash than you are being in a building.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically all I'm.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Does anyone else got Denise, you've got a question?
Oh yes, this is just when it's appropriate, maybe when Russell's got to the end, is just a couple of points about the report that I just want to make a comment or question about. But finish your section first, maybe Russell, or if you're...
Okay, we'll come back to you, Lee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just maybe note a thanks to Sarah and Russell for compiling this. It's actually updated and accurate. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah. And I'd like to endorse the your audit. I think that was very good. You did exceedingly well on that. And congratulations to you and the team for getting through that and not pulling your hair out totally. Thank you. Has anybody else got any more questions for Sarah or Russell on that section? No. Thanks, Russell. Thank you, Sarah.
Just takes us into service level results. Councillors have specific questions, but it's very much steady as we go, and consistency, doing our best to keep up the consistency amongst the applications and related stuff that deal.
I just had one thing that stood out in my mind was the graph on the dog pound. And for May of the last 3 years, we've had 6 dogs impounded. I thought there must be something in the water when they're actually all exactly the same.
Yeah, it's an increase in numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we can take that section as read. Colin.
Through you, Madam Chair, Russell, in recent times over the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of phone calls from people who have said that they've been approached by council about signage on the main highway. And just wondering if we've done a bit of a blitz, or is ZZTA doing a bit of a blitz? That's illegal signage, or signage that doesn't meet the requirements.
Yeah, there's been some recent action on that in terms of planners either having signs identified to them to give advice and check on, and there's been, you mean an election?
No, just general commercial signs advertising various events and bits and pieces. So I've had a couple of phone calls from businesses that have had signs there at recent times that want to know what the crackdown was, or whether there was complaints. And I think they have received letters.
As an example of a good target for one of Featherstone that I'll further check on. Yeah, it comes and goes, and there has been some recent untoward.
So if officers receive a complaint, they don't. That's
they get to the end of it. So we probably about 9 months ago, the Colin went to some compliance monitoring property companies.
Yeah.
And so it's something which we do. We did receive a complaint specifically from Ontario around the Three Waters sign, and they don't comply with the requirement of district plan. So we do need to bring it to attention and ask them to do a big slew. Equally on Three Waters topic, it was considered as the stop Three Waters sign, and what Tony's concern was the big red stop. People could react to that as opposed to so there was a safety concern for that basis. So going to the party of mandates. It's our responsibility to also the district plan. It's not what we're target. They complain to us, but our responsibility.
So in terms of the rule, it's part of our Warwick Combined District Plan. So Warwick County or ZTA, they have their rules in terms of signage as well. Or are they slot alongside our Warwick Combined District Plan?
So it's governed by the district plan. They all have so they have rules for road signs, traffic control devices, the normal slew of things that you would have on roads to drive. So they have standards for those signs, road signs, stop signs, all those types of things. And their only role would be if someone applies to them to put a sign up the road, to that say, okay, you can, but it's quite set. But on anything on the private side, private land, it's supposed to apply to the district plan. And the district plan essentially says that the purpose of the sign must relate to the activity on the site. Like so, if the farmer puts up a sign saying, I'm farming here, that's okay. If the farmer puts up a sign that says, stop something or other, then that's James, is there anything you want to add to that, or is that the summary?
Yeah, pretty much. And we've been relatively, there are opportunities for temporary signs as well, but that has a finite provision of 3 months, and we've been pretty liberal with that at this stage. We have approached 2 groups, one a national political party that has branding on one of those signs, and the landowner for another. And I thought we were making some progress on some of those, but at this stage there hasn't been any change, and there has also been a refusal to comply by one of those parties. So we may need to just think about how we continue to approach that, particularly if there are genuine road safety concerns.
Excellent, thank you. Just in terms of the Warren Combined District Plan, which is currently under review, or segments of it, is the signage more part of the discussion there at all, James?
Certainly is, but I would suggest that everything is up for discussion, but I would say there won't be any substantial changes that would enable this sort of proliferation of signage along state highways. I would say that even if we did suggest it or recommend it, it wouldn't survive the Section 32 process or the submission or hearings process. As I say, I think we've been rather liberal by classifying them as temporary signs. So they've been up for a while, they've had their say. We have some concerns, someone's made a complaint, so it's time to come down.
Excellent, thank you.
The only other point to bear in mind, the interplay between Waka Kotahi and our district plan is that when we get applications and we send it off for Waka Kotahi to comment, some of the topic focus point that they come back with us, they're often concerned about small scale lettering within the signs there as being a possible distractor to road safety, so they come back with that's some of the interplay that happens.
Thanks, Russ.
Lee, you had a question.
Yes, thanks for that. Just a further point on the signs, quite a few of the real estate agents had very large signs. I think it was back in 2016, and council had a real sort of strong message to them all to get rid of them. But a point I can't remember whether it's Russell or maybe James has made to me that council officers don't have the time or resources to be monitoring these signs. So often it's up to ourselves or members of the public to sort of draw attention to some of these illegal signs. But I had just a couple of minor points. Just looking at section 2, Russell, of service levels, I wonder whether it's we should just take out that top paragraph because it relates to satisfaction and goes back to an NBR survey of 2018. So I just think it would be useful to just remove that completely because it's so out of date. The other one was just in regard to impounded cars. Just let me get to that section. It said 0 and then mentioned 4 cars. So I just wondered whether that was an error in collating the report, maybe. Sorry, I'm just finding the section.
Page 20, I think it is, on the physical copy, abandoned vehicles, the use that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a very minor point, but it just didn't quite make sense, and I just thought it might be useful to correct it if that's what's needed.
Looks like a typo kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Check it, correct it, and update it.
Yeah, great, thank you. It's just a minor point. So there's one other general question I've got for you, and whether this is the appropriate time or not, I'm not quite sure, but Melanie presents to us at FAR meeting and again at Planning and Regulatory, and I just wondered whether that was a duplication of effort. I understand that obviously it's very important for FAR regarding risk, but I wondered if we could maybe consider or have a look at whether we can save Mel some time or duplication of effort and either present to P&R and then just report back to FAR. I really just wanted everybody's thoughts on that and what you thought was a way forward with that. Or indeed, if you're happy as it is. Harry, have you got any thoughts around that?
I think it depends on the Royal Mill actually ends up almost in 3 committees. So what's on the table today is a submission to a plan. So it's appropriate that this comes to planning and regulatory. The VAR is around risks created by climate change, but equally you get the adaptation responses which come to access and services. You know, so yeah, it's certainly something that we need to sort of synchronise, because otherwise we get 3 bits of information going three different places. Good point, Lee. We'll have a chat and see if we can streamline the process from the map.
Thanks. I mean, I entirely see your point. I was just, thought I'd just put it out there, but thanks for that, Harry. It does make sense. Okay, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes that section, so no one is there with their advice on respective submission.
Before Mel speaks, we'll now move on to section 2, which is the climate change, the response to the National Adaptation Plan report. Do I have a mover to receive that report?
Yeah.
Please? Thank you. Seconder, please. Thank you, Brenda. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Oh, carried. Then we'll, Mel, if you want to discuss anything in your report.
Hi, sorry. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for that. So just to give you a quick background on this submission, we decided to be consistent with the previous submissions we've made to MFE, meaning we did it across the 3 councils in the Wairarapa, so with Carlton and Marsden district councils. Because of the very tight time frame, it was released on the 28th April and the submission was due on the 3rd of June. We did not have enough time to go to council meeting or another committee, and that is why it was developed internally. So the process is the climate change officers developed a submission. It was approved by the CEOs across the region, and then it was circulated via an email to all elected members for feedback. And that is why it didn't go to the public earlier than today. So all the feedback were considered, and the submission was sent to MFE in time, which was great. The main point raised in this document were that central government needs to support local government a lot more. It can be more resources, it can be more funding, more guidance across how to adapt to climate change. So we really emphasize that support from central government is a key point for us. We also mentioned that nature-based solution should not be delayed. Quite often overseas, you can see that nature-based solutions are very effective to adapt to climate change and also quite cheaper than, let's say, grey solution with seawalls, for example. Another one was to make sure that there is a genuine relationship and partnership between central government, local government, and Maori, to make sure that it's really something very important to consider Maori views on climate change adaptation. So that was the main point in the submission. We decided not to answer all the questions asked by MFE. Just to give you a quick explanation, I think there were about 70 plus questions, and it was very time consuming. It would have necessitated an input from pretty much all the services in the council, and the time frame just didn't allow us to do that. That's why we went with a detailed letter as a submission. So yeah, if you have any questions.
Before we go to any questions, Mel, I'd like to congratulate you and Lisa on this report. I think it's or the submission, I should say. I think it's very comprehensive and certainly gives an overview of where the three councils are sitting on this. I think it's excellent. Thank you for the report. Any questions for now?
Yeah, no, thanks very much, I mean, I'd love to endorse Pam's comments about how comprehensive the report is and the submission that you made. I just have a generic question. It's not to do with the submission, but it's about climate change in general. Is that, do you think there's more of a public awareness now in your communications with communities about climate change and some of the mitigation measures that have been discussed and talked about? Do you think there's more awareness around that now than there has been in the past?
I think yes. At central and local governments, most definitely yes. On a community level, I really think it depends on who you're speaking to. Most of the people, they will have a general understanding of what is climate change. Some they will be pretty much experts, and others, they just don't want to listen to anything, and they have no understanding. But it's increasing, and I think the work we are doing as a council to speak to the community, and we have events to raise awareness, is very effective. But not only us, there's many organizations, and there's like Genless, you may have heard about them. All this communication is being quite effective, and I do think that awareness in the community is increasing and going in the right direction. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Anyone else got any questions? No. In that case, then we'll do here. So, do I have a mover for items 2 through to 5? So it is receives the attachment of Three Wairarapa District Council's joint submission draft national adaptation plan. 3, notes that Three Wairarapa District Councils agreed to make a joint submission in response to the Ministry for Environment's draft national adaptation plan. 4, notes that the Three Wairarapa District Councils have approved the joint submission on the Ministry for the Environment's draft national adaptation plan. And 5, notes that the Three Wairarapa District Council's joint submission on the Ministry for the Environment's draft national adaptation plan has been submitted to the Ministry for the Environment. Thank you. Excuse me, Brenda, did you have a question, or are you?
Oh, I've got a question. No, it's just more of a comment. I'd like to congratulate the Three Wairarapa District Councils for actually coming together and actually discussing this as a concerted group. It's actually nice to actually see that going on, that, you know, as councils, we can actually crack on and do stuff together as a team. So great work, Harry. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
Right.
Yes, I'm happy to move those items 2 to 5.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colin. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Lee. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Right, now we're still on C3. So we've got moved to item C3. Do I have a mover to receive the report, please, which is climate change? What's in there? On there. Yeah. Climate change, the 2021 greenhouse gas emissions. Do I have, I'll move that we receive that report. We have a seconder for that. Thank you, Lee. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Mel, do you want to speak to this report as well, please?
Yes, thank you. So this inventory, this greenhouse gas inventory, is the 4th inventory we've done for South Wairarapa District Councils. Scope of this inventory is only our corporate emissions, so it does not aim at reflecting the emissions from the whole district. And again, that's the fourth one, so 2018 being our baseline year. Those inventories are part of our action plan in mitigating climate change, meaning reducing our emissions. And yeah, it is part of the Ruamahanga strategy. So our gross emissions are 1,000 or 1,700 ton of carbon equivalent. So gross emissions are only what we emit. It does not account for forestry, meaning removals, and carbon dioxide equivalent is just a way to understand the effect of all greenhouse gases, methane and nitrous oxides and others, in a more simple way. So again, roughly 1,700 tons. But because South Wairarapa District Council has quite a lot of forest, in fact, our net emissions, so when we count with the removal from forestry, we are negative. So we are negative emitters, meaning that in fact we sequester carbon, and we did sequester almost 800 tons of carbon last year. On the Ruamahanga strategy, we have targets, greenhouse gas emission targets. As a reminder, we want to reduce our gross emissions. We also want to increase our carbon sequestration, and we want to reduce the biogenic methane. This last target follows the Zero Carbon Act from central government. So on the target, we're doing well on the gross emissions because since 2018, we reduced our gross emissions by almost 14%. And we're also tracking well on the biogenic methane because we reduced by over 15%. However, we sequester less carbon this year compared to 2018. And it's mainly due to the deforestation that happened in the Martinborough Golf Course. There is some replanting happening, but we're still not up to the level of sequestration we were 4 years ago. So yeah, I can take questions if you have.
Mel, what do you think? Do you know what has caused the reduction in biogenic methane? What is the reduction in biogenic methane being caused by? Do you know?
Yes, I know. In fact, it is just last year, Water NZ released a new guidance on how to measure greenhouse gas emissions from wastewater treatment plants, and it's just a different way of measuring, really.
Okay,
so
the measure has changed, not necessarily the investigations have been put in place.
Because we used, so I used this guidance and I updated all the data since 2018. But we had more data last year in 2021 compared to the previous year. So it's probably just being more accurate.
So in effect, this is our new baseline, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be, yeah.
Now, can I just ask you, when you take each individual thing, it looks like the wastewater is the highest emission.
It is. Our wastewater emissions are the higher, are the biggest by a long way. If I open my, sorry, I should have opened it before, but I was not.
In the middle of the night for you.
But let me find it. Sorry for that. Yeah, our wastewater emission is over 90% compared to everything else, because, you know, the council is in charge of wastewater treatment, but it accounts for the wastewater from the whole district. And that's why it's so huge compared to everything else.
So that comes from the second ponds, I would imagine, would that be right? Yeah.
It's oxidation ponds. Yeah.
So if we covered those, would that make any difference?
Stop the ponds working.
You'll stop that.
Increase it.
It's part of the biological process that goes on.
Well, that added a bit of humour to the whole
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
The good thing is not what you
I know that. Very good. Did anyone else have any questions to Melanie on that?
It's very good work, Melanie.
Yeah,
Very good work. Very important.
Can I just make a comment out? In some areas, it's actually quite difficult to understand until you drill down on the data.
Yeah.
And you really have to spend some time and some levels of concentration to understand that and maths wasn't one of my key subjects at school.
When if the graphs, I think, almost shown.
Yeah.
Page 52 and 53. I noticed the waste has increased by 56%, but it's such a small amount in the actual overall percentage. So, it's a charity of a very small number. When you look at percentage and change.
Awesome.
And if I can comment on the waste, it's the amount of waste produced. So it's only by in the office. It's very little. I mean, it's really not huge. And it didn't increase that much. It's just because emission factors were updated, and that's why we have it increased by.
So you're saying that this category for waste is just the waste from our office, it is not the waste that goes through the landfills?
No, because the landfill is not located in our district. It is outside of the district, and that's why it goes out. So we do not account for it, but we account for the waste produced by officers and elected members in the council building.
It would be large if we had all that printing stuff and it would be huge.
It goes in the electricity. It's in there.
Very good now. So we've just got one last thing. I forgot to receive the attachment on the greenhouse gas in bin 3 for 2021 for South Wairau District Council. So the two people that moved item 1, are they happy to move item 2 and not have that included as well? Everyone in agreement with that? Raise your hand. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much, Mel. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
See you. Right.
Thanks very much, Mel. You're doing great work. It's fantastic. You're a blessing to our district.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're up to C4 on the agenda, which is the action items report. So I'd like to move that we receive the action items report. Would somebody second that for me? Brenda, thank you very much. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Did anyone have any questions? I think would probably be the best way.
559, I think it's pretty well
I
covered
think
off.
we've
Yeah.
covered that off.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got any more on that, so. Right, so no other things on that. Great, thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. We will close the meeting. Thank you. Bye to those on Zoom.
Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lynn. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Start an arrow for the Essex citizens.
Yeah.
We've got one.
Geez, I'll go up.
Read this.
Oh, right, on the spots.